Hello, BookTube. I'm here with a video, and as you can see, it's not clickbait this time. It is why reread. Just simple question. I could do one of my definitive guides, jokingly say, "Well, why not?" Period. But no. I thought I'd go a little more into it because for about a year and a half now, I've been concentrating on rereading, and there's a main reason for it because my health has sort of took a dive. I'm sure everybody's aware, but took a dive at the end of January of 2021 when I had a heart attack, and then getting COVID in the hospital and everything subsequent, and long COVID and everything. So I have periods that I'm good and read quite well. See, this is the thing. This is the cognitive ability. I can't get words out at times, and I got to stumble around it or use other words to do it. And this has been happening for the last couple of weeks with the heat, um, and other reasons. But that's neither here nor there at the moment. But it's the rereading part. Now, I've been putting out lots of top 10 lists, as everybody knows, and a few have been contentious. Not sure why, but I always found top 10 lists difficult. But anyway, that's another issue. Uh, Now I put out a top 10 list. And I had to put out five later, but those I'm not going to deal with because I'm not really gonna concentrate on rereading those. But I put out a top 10 list of detestable authors, and that was clickbait, and a lot of people understood that sort of and the way of doing it. But it was weird how I thought I didn't come right out and say certain things, but I used an example of something that clearly I thought was saying what I want to say, but it was still misunderstood at times. But it's talking about rereading, and the list that I had there was Jane Austen was the one, and yes, I used trite and whatever was her writing, and then the Brontes, Thomas Hardy, F. Scott Fitzgerald, William Faulkner, Ernest Hemingway, J.D. Salinger, and Charles Bukowski. Um, let's start with the big older classic ones. Like I always figure I like they are pinnacles of the canon and beloved authors. And as people pointed out to me, as if I wasn't aware that they're popular and they're doing there's been so many adaptations and imitations of them, and it's like, no, I wasn't aware of that. Really? Uh, Anyway, but again, there's a lot of missed points in this. These things, the words that I was using, I read a lot of stuff. A lot of material that I read was in my teens or up until maybe early 30s. And I'm rereading, I'm reevaluating a lot of this stuff now. There was stuff that I liked then, and there was stuff that I went, and then there was stuff that I didn't like Jane Austen, for whatever reasons. Now, and I used as an example another writer. I wrote off George Orwell yonks years ago after reading or being forced to read. I am going like forced, gun to the head, chained to the book, 1984, and Animal Farm, and I swore I would never ever read him again. Now, I when I first came to the UK here, I was living in Milton Keynes, and there was a period that I was out of work, and I went to the library because I wanted to read. I didn't bring really too many books with me, and it was difficult to find. I went through authors that I knew and I liked. P.G. Wodehouse. I went through everything they had there. I was just sort of consuming these like crazy because he's a favorite author and as always has been. And then I'm using one of the spinner racks. I've told this before, so those that that have heard this can go, bathroom break, or go put the kettle on or something like that. But anyway, I'm using the spinner rack, and I'm turning it around, and a book falls down. Like this is exactly what's happened. Book falls down onto my foot, And so obviously I pick it up, and it's the back of the book, and I read, and it's, I read it's about a young guy's poet, and he starts working. He wants to do this great, epic poem, and he's really determined, and he wants to keep to his stance of to do it properly. But he's working in a bookstore, and poet, bookstore, interesting. So I open it up, and I flip through, and I see some scenes about customers coming in and talking about the used bookstore. And I go, oh, this sounds really good. Who is that? I flip it over, and it's like bloody Orwell. Immediately went back on, like, that was the thought in my head, bloody Orwell, and immediately went back on the spinner rack. And I spent probably another hour or more searching for something else to read, because I went through all the P.G. Wodehouse. And I started tentatively to go back to pick up, the book was Keep the Apodistra Flying. Sorry if I didn't say that. I kept going back, and then finally I did. I went back to it, and I sat down probably for about a half an hour flipping through. And I thought, well, I don't have anything else. It's a shortish book. I'll take this and read it. And I took it and I read it. I loved it. I really, really enjoyed it. And I'm going, this doesn't seem like, 1984 or Animal Farm. Because I never went any further. In my teens or 20s whenever I read these. So then when I went back, I started finding other things. And I found, Down and Out in Paris, in London. Wonderful. Road to Wigan Pier. Wonderful. Homage to Catalonia. Wonderful. And then I discovered I wanted to have a few props here. But anyway, there's 4 collections that were edited by Peter Davison for Penguin. There's Orwell's England, Orwell and the Dispossessed, Orwell in Spain, and Orwell in Politics. So I got each of those out and read them. They're about 400 and some pages. Essays, wow! Immediately, and then I read through all the fiction, including rereading 1984 and Animal Farm. I then was able to put in perspective 1984 and Animal Farm, and I still don't think they're great, like, stylistic writing books. I think his other ones, like Keep the Apodistra Flying, and other ones, and especially his nonfiction, I think light years better. But that's neither here nor there for now. But it was a hated author that, on rereading, became a favorite author. That's sort of all I'm saying here, is that, and that's what the point was of this video. It's not a sort of apology or anything. I don't apologize for this, because to me it was clear what I was saying. But the point of this video is to encourage people to reread for those very reasons. Now, you can reread for pleasure and just pure pleasure, but there's a reason, of some reason, and you may not see it on reading, that books are put into the so-called canon for a reason. There's many reasons for it, but there is something redeeming about those books. They are important, and I'll use that in quotation marks. Yes, a lot of important books have been left out, no question. But the ones that are in the canon are worth looking at and worth re-looking at. I know people, your time and my time is precious, but if you love reading, and you love, like, I like the sort of historical aspect of reading and books and how things developed. So what I'm saying is, all these authors here, I will reread. And that's the whole point of that. I eventually reread. I don't have any time frame, but because Jane Austen is at the top of the list, and she's there by virtue of being born in 1775, because I put them in order of date of birth, she will be my first reread of this list. It'll be a long time that I get, well, thankfully, but before I get to like Charles Bukowski and that. But I will go through. There's one of the authors that I have reread recently, and that was Ernest Hemingway. I'm not sure if I mentioned that. I think it was Farewell to Arms because I did the book to film for it. Nothing wrong with the story and everything like that. It's his style of writing, and I know he's beloved, but not everybody loves him. The critics, the same criticism I have, and I could pull out the reason why. But the critics and will say literary criticism will say, some of them will say that he is not a very good writer, and it's like, and then others say that because of those things, he is a great writer. So yeah, so there's that, and there's always going to be that, but and that's is Ernest. Well, yeah, I mentioned it, Ernest Hemingway. But anyway, it's to encourage people to reread, because even if it is a beloved book, it's amazing, especially when it is something that is in the canon. You'll be amazed, especially like if you just read it last week and you reread it now. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is leaving it for years, moving on to other books and reading other things, almost forgetting about you'll forget about the details. That, like, unless you've got, an eidetic memory or whatever it's called, you'll forget the details. So the idea is to leave enough passage of time, and then you'll start seeing other things in there that you may, I didn't see that. You've changed. I jokingly said in a comment that I might reread this because since I read it last, the book might have changed and the author might have changed. Yeah. It's me as the reader that has changed, and that is the key. And you might not like it anymore. You might see things that you didn't like, you don't like, but you will see new things. If you do read, a little more. I don't like to use a read deeply, but just read. And I've done that with many. I've put many authors to the side throughout. When you're young, you sometimes make snap decision. Oh, that's like this. I didn't like that. So there's so much other stuff I want to read. To me, at this point now, I want to read quality. And quality, I don't mean in good writing. I mean in quality of what I want to read because I'll read stuff that is not in the literary canon and enjoy it. I just did a TBR for Dictember. Those authors are not, they're not going to be in any, literary canon, and I don't think so. But they're important for certain things, and I want to read those. So that works. Will I reread them? Probably not. Maybe some, but not all. And that comes to other rereading of enjoyable books. On my best authors, was P.G. Wodehouse and like Clifford Simak's City, specifically for that. But City is not going to win will never win a Pulitzer Prize for literature, but it's a comfort thing, and it works. You really enjoy the writing, and that's another reason to reread, is to go back to old favorites. I always say it's like putting on a great pair of shoes or boots that feel really good. They don't pinch your toes, they don't pinch your foot when you walk. And once you work in the leather, if it's a leather boot or something like that, and that's the way it is with the book. You get comfortable with them. And so that's, they do reread. I encourage everybody to reread. I know if you're 18 in the 20s, you haven't had enough time since you've read something to reread in the sense that I'm talking. But yes, for rereading, for enjoyment of something. But even those, if you leave those for a decade and then come back to them, you will see different things. And I just wanted to say about George Orwell. There's several things that are happening. I will eventually go through what I have here and do George Orwell videos. But there are annotated editions coming out. There was Penguin does have an annotated 1984, but there's a publisher. Let me see, what's the publisher? It's Constable. That are going through the six. Is that right? Six fiction books. There's 4 that have been done now. 2 last year, and then the last 2 will be done next year. And this is the one that was last year. It was animal. Well, they're sort of going backwards with them. In 1984, I kind of like this. I like the design of this, and it's introduced and annotated by D.G. Taylor. He is a biographer of Orwell. I've seen him speak many times and spoken to him a few times, and he's going through these for Constable, and I'm not sure what's out. Oh, Coming Up for Air and Keep the Apodistra Flying, I think has just come out a few months ago. I do want to get those. And then the last 2, I guess, next year, I'm assuming will be Burmese. The last one will be Burmese Days and The Clergyman's Daughter. I think that's the title. COVID brain. So yeah, I just want to say that, and DJ Taylor is revising his wonderful biography of Orwell that'll be out sometime next year. And yeah, I just want to plug these for anybody who wants to. And I think they see this thing. I have a lot of projects that I want to do, and going through the Orwell 9 books, his 9 standalones, the fiction. Do them in chronological order when he wrote them. So Burmese Days first, and then go through Homage to Catalonia, Wigan Pier down in Paris and London, and talk about the publication history of it and things like that. I do want, if anybody's interested in that, it'd be just sort of prompt me to do it sooner than later, but it's not going to happen this year. I do say that. But anyway, I've prattled on enough of something that should be just a minute long. Is reread, period. That's it. You don't need to know anything else. Do reread. So I do encourage people to reread, and for this reason, and any despised authors that you have might be. But I always say too, when you read anything, go in with an open mind. Yes, there's problematic things. It doesn't matter. I could pick up something that's just written now, and to me there's going to be problematic things to it, and there'll be problematic things about that author and about in the future. It's you can't escape that kind of thing. It just now we seem to be in a prison of that, and I'm saying break out of that prison, and read with an open mind and understand that what we see now, how we see the world now, was not the way the world was seen in the past. Some may argue it was better then and better now. It's always a juggling act. But just an open mind, break out of that prison, and reread and read, and don't say, well, why was this done? Why didn't people pick up on this? It's not going to happen. They're going to say the same thing about you if you're making videos now. So what's going to happen in the future? Sorry, I'm rambling here now, but what's going to happen in the future? People are making videos extolling, contemporary authors that are out now, that will be looked at as vile, and there will be ones, and people will be asking, well, why didn't you see that? And you're on film, you're on video saying that they're perfect. Remember that, so it was the same for older books. I'm done. The sermon is done. The rereading sermon is done. Just go out and reread. Take care, Book 2.